Welcome to the Indie Film Hustle Podcast, episode number 392. We must learn to live together as brothers or perish together as fools. Martin Luther King.
Broadcasting from the back alley in Hollywood, it's the Indie Film Hustle Podcast, where we show you how to survive and thrive as an indie filmmaker in the jungles of the film biz. And here's your host, Alex Ferrari.
Welcome to another episode of the Indie Film Hustle Podcast. I am your humble and quarantined host, Alex Ferrari. Today's show is sponsored by Rise of the Filmtrepreneur, how to turn your independent film into a profitable business. It's harder today than ever before for independent filmmakers to make money with their films. From predatory film distributors ripping them off to huckster film aggregators who prey upon them, the odds are stacked against the indie filmmaker. The old distribution model of making money with your film is broken and there needs to be a change. The future of independent filmmaking is the entrepreneurial filmmaker or the filmtrepreneur. In Rise of the Filmtrepreneur, I break down how to actually make money with your film projects and show you how to turn your indie film into a profitable business. With case studies examining successes and failures, this book shows you the step-by-step method to turn your passion into a profitable career. If you're making a feature film, series, or any other kind of video content, the Filmtrepreneur method will set you up for success. The book is available in paperback, ebook, and of course, audiobook. If you want to order it, just head over to www.filmbizbook.com. That's filmbizbook.com. Before we get started, guys, I set up a special link to help people affected by the coronavirus, and you can donate to Feed America. There is a lot of people in need out there, and Feed America is a great organization, and they're helping millions of people on a daily basis, and they also need your help. If you want to donate even $5, $10, it goes a long way. Head over to indiefilmhustle.com/help. Now, guys, today on the show, we had Ted Sim from Indy Mogul and from Aperture Lighting. I've been wanting to get Ted on the show for quite some time, and we finally were able to coincide our schedules to make this happen. I've been a fan of Ted's and what he's doing at Aperture for a long time. I actually use almost exclusively Aperture lights when I was making On the Corner of Ego and Desire. And I just love what he's doing with not only Aperture, but now that he's part of the Indy Mogul family and was able to bring Indy Mogul kind of back to life, with him and Griffin, I was so excited to sit down and talk shop with him and see what's going on. Now, this was recorded pre-COVID-19, so that is why you will not hear anything in regards to COVID-19. It was recorded a little bit before the shutdown, but I think you're going to enjoy this episode. Without any further ado, please enjoy my conversation with Ted Sim. I'd like to welcome to the show Ted Sim, the legendary Ted Sim.
I don't know about legendary, but what's up, dude?
How you doing, brother? How you holding up, man?
Doing good, man. Doing good.
Thanks.
Hanging out, working on a bunch of stuff. Listen to that indie film podcast, man. Here we go.
Yeah, baby. I mean, this is like I was saying earlier, man. I think it's a long time coming, man. It's I've been a fan of yours for a while. I've been a fan of what you've been doing with Aperture and now with Indy Mogul, and all the service that you're doing for the film community in general, man. Because we're such a small group. There's not a lot of us doing what we do as far as trying to help the community and trying to be of service and all that stuff. And it's so funny. If we don't know each other personally, we know somebody who knows each other. And it's kind of like, it goes that way. So it's very fun. But I've been wanting to get you on the show. I had Griffin on the show a while ago, which was so much fun. And it's so much fun.
Griffin he's seriously just that. You think he's a nice guy when you watch the videos, and then you meet him or talk to him in person or online, and then you're like, oh my gosh, he's like 10 times nicer than I ever thought he could be.
Is he like like Canadian nice?
That's a really good question. I don't know how to answer that, but I will say absurdly nice. So however you define Canadian.
Because I think Canadian nice is like so nice. It's like, I still remember the first time I went to Canada, and first time I ever went there, and everyone was so nice. I swear I was like in a horror movie. Like, they're going to kill me. This is way too nice. I don't understand. Why are these?
Well, you're also coming from Los Angeles too, in the film industry in Los Angeles. I mean, you could not ask for a more like
Culture shock.
Horribly mean-spirited people to a community to come from.
What do you mean, sir? LA? What? How dare you, sir?
No, Los Angeles is where all of the friendly people are. Yeah,
but LA is the nicest. They give you the nice FUs, the nicest FUs ever. Like I've never. Yes. It's an art form here. You'll never hear the word no, ever. It's just we're passing. It's not this. It's that.
It drives me crazy.
It's just no. Like you go to New York, dude, your stuff sucks. And we're not going to do it. That's like what you hear in New York.
I just don't. I know it's true. I just don't want to admit that it's true because I hope that it'll change someday. I'm from Baltimore originally, by the way, so I'm used to the same thing. You get on the bus and the bus driver just, she'll drop an F-bomb in there and be like, "Are you fucking coming on the bus or are you leaving the bus?" I'm like, "Oh, geez, I don't know you."
Let's move it. Let's move it along. Kind of thing with the bus. All right. So before we get started, man, how did you get into the film business in the first place?
That is a great question. Yes, I grew up in Baltimore. So basically in Baltimore, if you tell people you want to make movies or work in film, it's basically like saying you want to be an astronaut. It's like, honestly, I think saying you want to be an astronaut is actually a more reasonable job because there's the Goddard Space Center and all this stuff out there. And like there's actual NASA employees walking around. So it's not really the most plausible thing to tell people. But, I wanted to work in the film industry because I grew up and I loved movies and I think I fell into the trap that most filmmakers fall into, which is, oh my gosh, watching movies is so fun. I wonder how much fun it must be to make a movie.
Right? It must be easy. I've seen the behind the scenes. It shouldn't be that difficult.
Oh, of course. Yeah. I mean, everyone's just having fun. And you're eating snacks. So there's trailers and stuff.
There's sushi. There's lobster tail. I mean, yeah, sure.
So you fall for that. And, you get into it. You start. I've been making movies since I was a kid. Since like middle school, I was like trying to play with my little cameras and stuff like that. In high school, I actually got a job as a projectionist assistant, where I was actually my grades were terrible in high school, but I would go to this local theater every day and I'd work as the assistant over there. And eventually, I made the jump to go out to film school. Came out to when I found out that film schools actually care about more than just your film experience, which sounds. It doesn't sound obvious. It was something I needed to learn. I buckled down. I went to Maryland, studied my butt off, and then eventually got the grades, got into UCLA, did my film program there. And then I suffered the thing that I'm sure a lot of listeners can say that they suffered from, which is the post-film school blues of feeling so elite and you feel like you're the best and you worked really hard and you got into this program and you come out. And people literally won't pay you to like clean their shoes. Right?
So you mean reality?
You're talking about reality. When I hear reality, I think of reality TV.
No. That's life. You mean life hitting you, smacking you upside the head, and going, no, you're not as cool as you think you are. Yes, we all have.
It's the worst feeling in the world. If there's anyone listening to this that feels like they're in that place in their life,
it's tough.
I'm not going to say that it doesn't get worse than that, but I'm going to say that is a low point, and it's normal to be in a low point there. That's okay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is a normal place. Out of film school, I started working at Universal Studios Florida, doing PA work.
Oh no!
I was in PA work. I was a translator for Global Guts, the Nickelodeon show. And then I just realized a while, I was like, this sucks. This is not what I was told that I was going to make $100 million movies. This is, my last name should be Spielberg. I don't understand.
To me, who lied to me? So looking around.
I can tell you who lied to you. The one that you're paying that bill to every month to pay back your student loan. That's the one that's the one who lied to you.
You're driving a hot take there, Alex, in terms of the, obviously the film school versus no film school debate's a hot topic, right?
Yes.
I got to be honest. When I first got out, and for probably 10 years afterwards, I thought for sure no film school, right? Because I was like the golden boy in film school too. Like I graduated like top of my class, I like a director's spotlight, all this stuff, and it came out and just nothing, right?
Crickets.
But I think it takes a certain amount of time to see the people around you grow up and become. Because I think when you first graduate, you look around and you look at your friends and you're like, man, I'm an idiot. And all of these people that I graduated with are idiots. Like what network are they talking about here? And what you don't realize is that it's not
That's
that they're
awesome.
idiots, and it's not that you're an idiot. It's just that it takes time for everyone to grow into the thing that they become. And now everyone that I look to now is producing something or shooting something or directing something, and it's a great feeling because it's like seeds, right? They got to grow up into something someday. So now I don't really know. I'm kind of torn on the film school thing. I do believe that if you're really motivated and dedicated, you can learn everything that you learn in film school plus more online. You can learn it from other people. You can learn it just by doing it. If you take that money and make a movie, you can do it. I feel the same way about business. But for a certain person out there that, can't make that jump or doesn't have that self-drive, I don't think it's a bad move anymore. I've flipped on that since.
But arguably speaking, though, if you don't have the drive to go to self-educate yourself, do you think you're going to have the drive to make it in this business?
That's a really good question. I
mean, if you're like, I don't want to have to do work to learn. I need someone to tell me what to do because that's the way the film business is. Yeah, there's going to be someone holding your hand through this entire process, especially indie film. Oh, absolutely through indie film.
Yeah. Indie film is a nightmare, right? And again, I'm speaking to people mostly that are in the States, right? Because, you got publicly funded arts in Germany and a lot of places. Sure, that's a different thing. And there's downsides to that and there's upsides to that. But if you're doing indie film in the States or any place that doesn't have publicly funded arts, man, it is, it ain't easy.
It ain't easy in this world. All right. So you get out, you realize that the world sucks and, they lied to you. And now you're in this dark, depressive place. Where do you go from there, sir?
Okay. So, I get lucky actually. So I start, I just start owner operating. I get a camera. I start shooting things. I shoot everything, man. I shoot bad weddings. I shoot horrible commercials for the people down the street. I start taking on just little gigs here and there. I find my way eventually onto a set until I started doing a kind of a spiff in terms of working in reality documentary. And this is back when I think, Shark Week was, I don't know if it's still as big as it was back then, but Shark Week was it's still a big deal. So I got in because originally from Baltimore in Silver Spring over in Maryland, Discovery Channel is out there. So I had a couple friends that were from the Discovery Channel people, and I met some people on set, and I just started working as the go-to guy for the Shark Week people. And I was the guy that was known as, and really this is because I was just some kid out of film school. I was known as the guy that could do it for really cheap. Right. It would be okay, not that great, but I could get it done quickly and for a budget that everyone else would be like, hell no, we're not doing that. Eventually, the guys that I started working for were the company that would get contracted out to do Shark Week. And they'd get contracted to do these kind of big discovery gigs here and there. But, just like any freelancer, entrepreneur, company owner knows, you get reached out to from time to time with lowball gigs, right? And they used to just say no to those gigs and they would just start throwing them to me. And I was the guy that was like, oh, you'll pay me to hold a camera? Hell yeah, I'm down. And I would shoot anything. I would work anything. Yeah. Didn't matter, right?
Yeah.
I did that for a while until eventually I got lucky. Those group of guys actually reached out to me after a couple of years of doing a couple videos, and I think what they were noticing is the same thing that I think everyone could say is still happening now, is that the budgets for all these projects were going down. And they felt like they needed to bring on someone that, was scrappy, that could do kind of the lower budget projects that they got thrown. So they actually ended up bringing me on as their C-string director, which I didn't know what that was until the time, but there's a director, there's a B director, and a C-string director. It's like legal firms, right? Like when you hire a law firm or something, you go after the first person, the name whose person is on the legal firm, but then they don't actually work on it. They pass it to their B person. If their B person doesn't want to work on it, they pass it to their C person.
Right.
So that was me doing educational videos for McDonald's and doing, I would do the how to set up your car, BMW videos and stuff like that.
Wow. Hey, it paid. It paid something.
It paid. And you know what? I was really lucky because I think I got paid to direct really early on, which is something that I think a lot of people.
Oh, that's awesome. Right? I mean, yeah, look, I would have killed to direct. I was editing. So basically what you were doing in camera, I was doing in post. So that's why my IMDb is 100 credit long. And that's not even including just post and not even including commercials, music videos, and all this other crap that I did. I did anything for if it walked in the door, I did it.
Were you an editor or were you like an editing assistant? Or
Oh,
like,
no.
'cause I did rotoscoping for a long time, and it was like, man, it was bad.
No, I did editing. I did.
Yeah.
I was an assistant for like a minute, and then I went off and started freelance editing commercials and music videos and things like that. Then slowly I got into feature editing. Then after that, I got into color grading. After that, I did online editorial, and then post-production supervision, and then VFX super. So I started just adding more tools in the toolbox, because if I couldn't get paid to edit, I could color. If I'm not getting paid to color, I could do post-supervisor and then package it all together.
Dude, I think post is the smartest way to, again, maybe the grass is always greener, but I legitimately believe that editing, if you want to write or direct or any of that stuff, like, let's be real, most people want to write and direct, right? If you want to do either of those things, I really think post is the way to enter, because that's when you assemble. This is going to sound like belittling a bunch of jobs that, and again, I'm coming from a very camera heavy cinematography world. So like, please, if you're hearing it from anyone, please hear it from me. Almost everything is like building the blocks for someone to edit, right? You're like making a bunch of Legos. And at the end of the day, someone's got to put the story together. That's the editor. So if you want to write and direct, I don't think that there's any better practice in the world than post.
Oh, I would agree with you 100%. It helps me. So when I started directing commercials and directing TV and all that kind of stuff, I could move so much quicker than anybody else. I mean, I was doing 100, 110, 120 setups a day, just flying, because I just knew what I needed. I didn't have to wait till like, oh, we're just going to take that whole shot. I'm like, no, stop right there. I'm going to cut there. Let's move on here. Yeah. And it just, it works so much better. And not that I'm a bit older than you, but so, you know, I didn't have the ability to learn editing at home. I had to, you know, I had to drive an hour, get there early, work on the Avid, stay late.
That's the best. I don't care. Even if it was slower, even if it was harder, just learning how to assemble something. And just know and be that close to the finished product. I think it's priceless, man. Because everything else is just so vague and ephemeral, and you don't know what's important and what's not important until you see it in the edit.
Absolutely. So I wanted to ask you, man, you're obviously, you know, the first time I, you know, discovered you was through Aperture and that company, and you're the president of Aperture. And for people who don't know what Aperture is, it's a lighting company, a very cool lighting company. How did you get involved with that company? And, you know, how did you jump from, you know, doing really bad wedding videos to the president of Aperture?
That's a really good question. So in between that, obviously, I had my stint kind of doing the directing for that production company, which that was good. That was fun. I would basically get asked to bid on a job, probably somewhere between 15 to 20 times a year. I would put bids in, and realistically, I'd probably on a good year, I'd win, I don't know what, 6 to 7. On a bad year, I'd only win like 3 to 4 gigs out of that. And they were like pretty big gigs. I could spend my time and shoot that. I could live off that for a while. At a certain point, things start to slow down. So I decided, oh man, I need to find other work outside of just this being repped at this company. They're not giving me enough work right now. So I can't say the name of the people, but I went off and I eventually ended up becoming a channel manager for a jumbo YouTube star. And I'm talking like early YouTube.
What year are we talking about? What years are we talking about?
I don't want to say.
Okay. It's early. Look, it's only been around for like 10, 12 years. So it's not, you know.
Not that long. Someone's going to piece it together, right? But I ended up working for a really early YouTube star. It's a little cringe is why I say it too, because I wasn't really happy with a lot of the work that I was doing, but it was paying and it was regular. This is like the gold rush of YouTube too. So a lot of money was coming in.
And you could still cheat. You could still cheat to get your stuff up on the front page.
I actually, to be honest, I wasn't doing a lot. I was basically managing the production schedule and making sure that the videos would come out on time. That's what I learned.
I actually had the rocket jump guys on, and they told me their techniques, what they did back in the day.
You could just do a thing to tweak it.
And you were on the front page. That's why they have 9 million freaking subscribers.
Yes. Yeah. And you know what? That stuff is life changing. And I still think that way about most new film technology that comes out. If you're the first one to get there and break it before it is too hard to break, dude, you reap the rewards. You know, so good on those guys.
All right, so you're working. So you're working on YouTube.
So doing YouTube, channel managing for a big guy out there. Eventually, I'm not happy with the work I'm doing there. I'm kind of getting I'm getting the trickle in of commercial gigs. I'm not really happy with a lot of it, and I get reached out to by this person who is he's one of my mentors, but his wife's brother reaches out to me and says, "Hey, I have this gear company. We're doing really well in like Asia, and we're doing really well in Europe, but I don't really know why we're not selling anywhere else. And I want to hire someone in the States to come help out with that." My buddy Travis, who's the guy that recommended me for the gig, was like, "He says you'd be a really good job for this. What do you think? It'll pay. It's a regular gig." And I was like, "Fine, I will take full-time regular work." But I'm not really sure at the time. And I go out and I meet this guy, and this guy is, he's a guy from China who becomes a very good friend of mine now, and he's an amazing mentor. But I meet this guy in this warehouse 30 miles east of Los Angeles, and I sit down, and I swear it looks straight out of like a James Bond movie or something. Like the lights are dim. I'm sitting in an empty warehouse. There's like 2 chairs, and we're looking at each other, and we just talk, right?
That's awesome.
And to be honest, as soon as I walked in, like my first thing that I'm thinking is like, I need to get out of here. This is not a good situation. Like this is clearly not legitimate. Why did my mentor like recommend me for this thing? But we started talking about equipment, and this isn't that long ago. This is 2013 or something like that, and this is just after the DSLR booms happened, right?
Mm-hmm.
DSLR boom happens. Everyone's shooting movies. All of a sudden, cameras are affordable. Oh my gosh! Mm-hmm. And we talk about this thing, and the big thing that he brings up is he talks about how he thinks that cameras have gotten affordable now. Filmmaking and accessories are also going to need to get more affordable now, because all of a sudden, the only people making movies are not just studios and Hollywood filmmakers. It's the first time that independent artists are coming in. It's the first time that businesses need to make video. And we talk about it for a while. And at first, I'm kind of dubious. I'm like, no, like gear is expensive because it needs to be expensive. And like, he asked me to bring some of my gear, and I brought. I don't mind saying this name actually. I brought this Red Rock handle that I like screwed in on the bottom of the camera. Yeah, you remember that handle, right?
Yeah.
You remember it was like a 300.
It's expensive as all hell.
And it used to be like the cheap option, right? And like I was really tapped in on the gear. I was a gear nerd, so like I did all the research, and I was like, oh my gosh, like this shoulder rig is only $1,800. And like, he's looking at it and he's like, like that's 2 bike handles and like some PVC. Like, do you really think that's worth $1,800?
Right.
And you got to start thinking, don't get me wrong. I get all the people out there that say buy nice, buy twice, right? Like I am one of those people too, right? But when you have a niche industry that all of a sudden becomes blown up, and the people that are providing for that industry aren't pricing it for a lot of people, they're just pricing it for studios. Like if Disney comes over to you and says, how much is a light? Yeah, dude, F you, you're Disney. It's $10,000 a light, right? Yeah. But the whole thing that he said was, he was like, I think that there's going to be this change that's going to happen someday. I don't have a lot of experience in the film industry, but I'm looking for someone that is a shooter, that understands filmmaking, that knows what the indie process looks like, and can actually just try to push this stuff, right? I didn't go to business school. I didn't do any of this. We hit it off, and eventually I ended up saying, I think this is okay, I'll do this. And in the back of my head, I'm thinking like, okay, maybe I'll do this for like 6 months or something. I'll do this for 6 months. I'll put in a notice. I'll leave. And, it's winter. Summer comes around. The gigs always roll in the summer. I'll just do some work then. Say yes to the job. I make a Facebook page. I make a Twitter page. I make a LinkedIn. I make just all the little things, right? And it's fun to say that now because now those things are blown up into something else. But I make these pages, and I just start posting. In the beginning, we have a $0 marketing budget. But the one thing that I think is, okay, what did I learn from all my days at YouTube? In fact, it wasn't even that conscious. It was just like, oh, well, if I have this stuff and I looked at it and I tried it and I was like, this is good. I don't see why people don't like it. Why don't I just start reaching out to people here and there? So I start reaching out to, honestly, if I was doing this now, I probably would have reached out to you, Alex. I probably would have reached out to me. I would have reached out to Darius. I would have reached out to anyone that has some kind of following online. Right. And I just said, hey, I'll send you this thing. If you don't like it, that's fine. If you do like it, consider saying something about it. And, now I say this and everyone's like, well, that's the most obvious influencer marketing crap ever. But you got to remember, this is a different time. Nobody was doing it. And what we found is that we were the only people that were doing that. So all of a sudden, you've got all these YouTubers and online people being like, oh, my gosh, like, you're reaching out to me for this thing and you want to send me, like, a $600 light? Like, like, oh, my gosh, like, yes, like, let me look at this. And to be fair, the gear was pretty good. But I think a lot of it was also that Nobody was reaching out at the time. Nobody was taking
them seriously. No one taking them seriously.
No one was taking the online filmmaking community seriously. Mm-hmm. And I think even today, we're still starting to see the online filmmaking community get taken more seriously. It's blown up a lot. It's changed like crazy, right? Like we live in a day and era now where, Canon pays like $250,000 to like someone like the top, like crazy, again, not me, but like those like crazy, some of the
what's his name? Peter, what's his name? Peter something or other. Oh God. Yeah. And, okay. The big guys.
I have no idea.
Peter Cannon or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. I know that all those are huge now, and it's crazy to me, which is insane. But nobody was taking them serious at the time. Because of that, we ended up just meeting these people, talking to these people, and to be honest, it was kind of radio silence for a while. NAB rolls around 2 months before NAB. I actually put in a notice to quit. I say, hey, I've been here for 10 months, which is longer than I expected to be there for. I was like maybe 8 months or something. 8 months. I've been there for longer than I had planned to be there for. And I said, hey, I had a lot of fun. Thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate being here. I still believe in the mission, stuff that you're working on. But look, I'm looking at this Facebook page and nothing's really moving. I'm looking at this YouTube page, nothing's really moving. And what happens is all of a sudden, we go to NAB one year, and the craziest thing happens. We're like this tiny 10 by 10 booth back in Asia corner, right? Mm-hmm. With like all the other cheap Asian brands. Mm-hmm. And we're there, and the weirdest thing happens day one, which is everybody from the internet just shows up at our booth. Like everybody you could ever think of from the internet shows up to our booth, right? Like I'm for like MKBHD walks by at some point. Eventually it's so busy and packed, and with these online people that all of a sudden all of these fans of the online people see these online people there. So then random people are now at our 10 by 10 booth. And it's this swarm of people. I think I did something like 60 to 70 interviews per day, because every time I shot an interview, like 3 other people would see it and be like, why is this company so hype? I need to go shoot a thing now.
Dude, I got to stop you. When I was doing research on you and when I typed you in, all I would see you is doing is NAB videos. Like that's all that, other than the thousands of videos you've done yourself, I would just see interview after interview of NAB and be like, dude, did this guy sleep?
No. So this became, now it's like a tradition or something, right? It's like go to NAB and interview Ted, which is, I think it's very flattering and great. And it's a good thing for the company too. But at the time we were just so shell shocked, right? Like we had like 5 people there maybe, and we're like overwhelmed by people. Like I think Shaq came by at some point. Like Shaq comes to NAB every year.
You mean Shaq Johnson or the real Shaq? I know, I'm joking.
yes, okay. Gotcha.
I'm absolutely joking with you, sir.
Yeah. Shaq comes by, and they're like the booth is just so busy that he ends up walking by, and it becomes this crazy thing where at the end, one of the bigger gear companies out there actually asks like, hey, would you be interested in sitting down to talk business? And the big question all of a sudden becomes, one, is Aperture going to remain Aperture by itself as an independent thing? Mm-hmm. Or 2, the second question, when we all sat down to talk about this, was, Ted, are you still leaving? And I was like, NAB was supposed to be my last day. I was kind of just going to show up and put in my time and be out.
But now you're like the face of Aperture.
They love me. It's how life works. And let me just say too, there's like a lot of people that work at Aperture that work super hard. Yeah. That I get credit. I get way more credit than I deserve on this stuff, really. And it's just because, I can't say this enough. Seriously, there's so many people here that work super hard. So I do want to be clear that for the most part, people think I'm like some like black magic wizard or something. We're just making products. No, that's not the case. We have a team of engineers that work super freaking hard.
You mean you're not the one in the back actually designing and building it from scratch yourself, sir? That's
And even the videos, right, we have like a team of people that help us make the videos.
You mean you don't do all those videos by yourself and edit them by yourself?
This is what people think. They want some feeling of some person doing something. It's absolutely not true. Right? Okay. Anyways, so begins the epic saga that has become Aperture.
That's awesome.
A lot of changes have happened since then. The team's grown like crazy, but we're now at a point now that, like Disney bought a whole bunch of lights, which is crazy.
Did you charge them $10,000? Did you charge them $10,000?
No, absolutely not. In fact, they sat down. They were like, well, what's the Disney price? And I was like, there is no Disney price, because like you got to realize that we sell for average Joe Schmo filmmakers, right? Like I talk to gear companies that are like, we feel bad when normal people buy our products because normal people aren't supposed to buy our products, right? Like,
Right.
I would feel bad if you charge some guy down the street like $14,000 for some of these lights. I'm like, this is crazy.
Now with today's technology, before I would get it because there wasn't LED technology. It actually did cost a lot to produce a professional cinema light,
yeah.
you know. And I worked with those lights. I've used those lights. They're beasts, and they last forever. But
yes, and I think it's also that when you make them for a small quantity of people, then it makes
you can do
sense,
that.
right?
Yeah.
The same reason why, diving gear.
Well, look, that's why an Alexa. Look at an Alexa. Alexa's $125,000 for that's not for everybody. And arguably, unless you have an ASC at the end of your name, it really doesn't matter as much when there's so many other options that can get you a really pretty picture that most people out there will never notice. And
don't get me wrong, there are real differences between the cheap and the expensive stuff.
Absolutely.
Right? But if you aren't, I would just urge most people to do a little more research because, look, what is it when you look at the camera that shot Superman Returns?
The Genesis.
Yeah, it was some how many million? It was kind of almost a Frankenstein between a Sony and a Panavision, and it was a beast. It was a monster. I saw that camera. The workflow was just built for 5,000 post guys to work on. It was just not a friendly camera. The only thing I just want to say, and this is not to cast shade on people that use the super expensive stuff, because it's okay to use the super expensive stuff if you know what you're paying for.
Sure.
You know what you're paying for. But there's so many people out there that they see price equals quality, and it's just not true a lot of the time. In fact, if I'm being honest with you, perception equals quality. So it's like, just be wary of marketing, be wary of, because it does. And when I say marketing, I don't mean just like some Super Bowl ad, right? Like I see this every time I watch a Super Bowl ad. The first thing I think is, if I buy that product, I'm paying for that Super Bowl ad.
5.7 million. 5.7 million.
It's hard, right? Like I can't buy. It's really hard for me to buy a Mophie because I'm like, damn, Mophie just bought like 3 Super Bowl ads. I'm like, I just wanted a phone charger. I didn't want to pay for a Super Bowl ad. Likewise. I feel that way. The other type of marketing is where you stand back and you just price things really high and you just say, we're the best and this is the price you're paying. And that perception is something that can I curse on this show? It's okay?
It's fine.
A little bit. Okay. Some asshole is sitting there thinking that it's just like me at some company that's trying to market stuff and sell stuff to you. Somebody's sitting there and thinking, by standing back and by being aloof and by pricing things high, this is how we'll get you to feel like it's worth more. This is how we'll get you to feel like it's royalty. And I have heard people say that. I've been in conversations about this stuff. And I want indie filmmakers to know, and I think they already know this too, but know that, one, it's not really the gear, it's the artist. But two, if you're going to spend the money, know what you're actually spending the money on. It's like blind purchases out there.
We were talking a little bit before we got on air about my movie On the Corner of Ego and Desire. And that movie, if you want to talk about quality versus investment, I purchased a 1080p pocket camera, shot the entire movie on it. I blew it up to 2K and projected it at the Chinese theater, and nobody believed that I shot it on a little camera the size of my iPhone. Shot it raw. But I also knew what I could do with it in post because I have post experience. I had those tools in my toolbox, just like you know what you could do with certain cameras and certain lenses because that's your toolbox. So I knew what I would get out of it. It's not like I just grabbed an iPhone and shot a movie. I'm like, oh, look how cool. But it's a perception where people were like, if I would have led with that, people were like, oh, this is going to look like crap. And then when I saw it projected for the first time, I'm like, oh my God, this is probably one of the prettiest things I've ever shot in my entire life. It was just stunning for the story I was telling. I mean, if this is the Avengers, probably not,
that's not going to fit, right?
It's not going to fit.
A lot of what you're paying for is one is like intense reliability, which is that like this thing will last forever and it's built like a tank and it's never going to break. Two is that you're also asking for like certain ergonomic things of like, I just need it to do certain features. But if you're an indie filmmaker, you might never use those features.
Correct.
Ever, right? Like DMX is an easy one, right? Like lighting boards and stuff like that. if you need that feature, you need that feature. And most high-end shows need that feature.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're an indie filmmaker, you're not going to be bringing a light board onto your set. So why are you paying for that function?
Unless you're extremely pretentious.
Unless you are.
Hey, listen. I said that. Ted didn't say that. If you're an indie filmmaker with a $10,000 movie, and you bust out a light board, you've got to reevaluate your priorities, sir. Or ma'am.
There are plenty of talented people that can make it do on less, and maybe you're using different technology.
Sure.
That makes sense. But yeah, I completely agree. I think so. Now we're in this weird place where, and I would say that the past 2.5 years of Aperture have been marked by this. Right, we've been doing this for 7-8 years now. Mm-hmm. The past 2.5 years in particular have been. The indie community loves us, and we really we came from the bottom.
Yeah, zero.
There's people that come from the top. There's people that come from the bottom. We came from the bottom. We're going up, and we're now at the point that this is the first time I've ever heard this in my life that the low end is like, Aperture, where are you going? Your gear is becoming too expensive and high end, which is mind blowing for me. But people from the high end are now saying, Aperture, stop playing with the kids. We like what you're doing. Make it for us. And we're in this weird situation where we're in the middle, and nobody's ever happy. And I will say that the high end and the low end of filmmaking, they hate each other, man.
It's two camps. Yeah. I mean, when you say you made a movie for $5 or $10 people look at you weird, and they're like, "How is that even humanly possible?" And then, how dare you make cinema for that little bit of money? And then there's the high end guys. Look, I'm best friends with some ASC guys who look at what I do sometimes, and they just look at me like, I don't understand. I don't understand.
I don't get it.
How did you do this?
And there's so much value in both of them. Right?
Yes.
There's so much value in both of them, and they're both right. It's just,
what's the end game? But what's the end game of each? Yeah. What's the end game of each? Yeah. Look, if you're making $100 million movie, there's a way to make that movie. If you're making a $10,000 movie, there's a way to make that movie. Yeah. That's
said it better than I could have ever said.
I mean, that's the way it is. So but sometimes where you get the problem is, and I love this, and I'm sure you've come across this, is when you get the indie filmmaker with the indie mentality and an indie film set, and then they get access to a high-end DP who's working on a show, who's got, a G&E budget it's seen, and he can't even understand how he could do anything with less than an Alexa and what's an Angenu 120 or something like that costs $110,000. He can't work without that tool set because that is what he's used to doing. Where I'm used to just get a cool lens, get a cool camera, let's make it happen. But I've also worked on higher end shows that budgets. I'm not going to do that on a $500,000, $1 million show. Yeah. That's not appropriate for that.
Yes, and that right there, what you said is what I wish I could tell everybody in terms of there's a high end and there's a low end, and for some reason they hate each other. And I wish I could just tell people on the low end, because it boils down to this, right? The low end thinks that there's no reason to spend that much money on the high end. And I know I sounded like I was talking like that before too, but yes, you can achieve amazing results with affordable gear. You can do that. But I just want to tell the low end people, there is a really important reason for why people spend so much money on the high end. And that's because everything else costs a lot of money. That's because the details really matter. You're paying for the diminishing return, right? And you really need to pay for that. And those tools are incredible, but it costs a lot of money to really utilize them.
Right. But you can't Chavo can't, you want Chavo to have the best paints, the best paintbrush, the best canvas to do what he does, or any of these high-end.
The master needs masterful tools. Chivo needs the greatest tools.
He needs the best. So I want him to have a 65 Alexa. I want him to have, giant cranes that block off, he's flagging off the sun. I want him to do that because that's what a master of his stature deserves to work with. And I'm not saying that he's better or worse than anybody else, but he is a master at what he does. So you can't do what he does in the films that he does, with a $10,000 kit. It's just not. But now on the other end, if you're making,
likewise, if I could tell the high end, the low end is amazing, and they can do incredible things for such little money. Please respect that. Yeah.
Exactly. And I think it's just like how the top end's looking down, like, how dare you? The bottom line is like looking up and going, screw you, you elite bastards.
Yeah, you guys spend money frivolously and you don't realize what you're spending money. And no, that's not true. The high end knows exactly why they're spending the money that they spend, and there's a precise reason for it.
And it makes financial sense because the projects they're working on are by the time they're on set, that conversation's already been had. It's already been pre-sold. They already know how much money they're going to make. If they're spending $150 million, I promise you, unless you're cats, you're going to make your money back.
Shots fired.
Oh, come on. My favorite tweet on Cats. I've yet to see the movie. I'm dying to see the movie. I can't wait to see it. Because that happens once in a lifetime. You get once, maybe twice in a lifetime, a film like Cats. Cats is the worst thing to happen to cats since dogs. I thought that was the best. Just the best review of that movie. Cats is the worst thing to happen to cats since dogs. I just thought that was amazing. So anyway, we've gone off track. Okay. So I'm glad we got into this talk about gear, because there is this whole gear porn subculture in the filmmaking space. And I've talked a little bit. I've had episodes about stop it with the gear porn. It doesn't matter. I don't care what your camera is. I don't care how much you spent. All I care about is the story. And I think, and please let me know what you think. And you can deny, you could say you don't want to answer this, but I feel a lot of times that filmmakers use gear as an excuse not to do what they're saying they're supposed to do. Like for me, it took me 20 years to do my first feature because I kept saying, well, I need this to make that feature film. I need this camera. I need these resources. I can't get out of bed for less than $1 million. I have to make this movie for $1 million. I just can't do. So then you start using the gear and you're like, oh, well, I need a red this, or I need the Alexa, or I need this lens, or I need that. And it's an excuse. It's just an excuse to not have to actually get up on plate and take a swing. Would you agree on that?
I completely agree to that. And look, the irony of this is, dude, I run a freaking gear company. Like but you run an affordable gear company at least. But let me just say, like my livelihood, because now we're in a place that people say like Aperture is like the gold standard of us for a lot of people out there, right? So let me just say, our livelihood depends. If you're an indie filmmaker out there, people use gear as procrastination. Mm-hmm. The same way that I see people that try to make their own studios or buy their own studio. I'm just like, dude, that has nothing to do with the thing you want to make. If you want to make that thing, go make that thing. Don't do a step A that leads to a step B. Don't do a step A that you don't like with the off chance that it might lead to a B that you like. Just do the B. Start off there. Start off with the thing that you want to do, that you're setting out to do. That being said, for the high-end people, right, again, like seriously, I understand why, and I understand the results that are capable if you geek out about gear. And it's amazing. But for 99.9% of people out there, people just use gear as a way to procrastinate and to research something that maybe
research
isn't the best use of their time. Research is code for procrastination. Most of the time.
I did a ton of that. Oh God, so much. That's why I knew what that Red Rock handle was, because I did research on that. Oh, I did so much research.
Does this. Everyone does it. They say, I want to work in film, and they sign up for. And I'm just as guilty of this as anybody else. Like, it's fun to research. It's fun to feel like you're learning when you're not actually learning in the fastest way possible. It feels good, right? Like, and I have people that read through Aperture, and I'm sure you probably get the same thing on Indie Film Hustle. But I want to say thank you for supporting the stuff and being a part of it. But also, like, dude, go make something if that's your goal. Like
the 2-year-old light that you bought from us a couple years ago, it still works. Yeah. You're good.
It still works. Go make something, dude. Like go chase your dreams. Don't chase talking about your dreams. Go do I have no horse in this race. I literally benefit from the opposite. So whatever.
No. And the bottom line is that because there's, as you know, and I know this might sound as a shocking statement, but there are a lot of talkers in our business who just like to talk and hear their own voice, and they don't actually go out and do it. So that's why when someone comes up and says, hey, I'm going to go make something, and they actually do it, it is a revelation. It is an absolute revelation. Like, oh, he actually gets something, that she gets something done, as opposed to talking about it for a year. We all know that writer who's been working on that screenplay for 5 years, that one screenplay for 5 years. We all know, look, I knew a guy who directed a short film and it lasted 4 years in post, 5 years in post, because he just kept tweaking and moving and this and that, because he never, if he let go of it, he would have nothing else. And he knew that was the only thing he was going to, like, he felt like that was the only thing he was going to get. So there's that, and then they use gear, they use, oh, I needed to be perfect or this and that. And all of a sudden you wake up and you're 70.
And let me just say too, like part of Mogul is, and again, you see this all the time too, is that we talk to high end, like the best ASC filmmakers out there, like every week. And when we talk, they tell us every single one of them has some story about, like, oh, we didn't really have the tool we needed, so we had to just jerry rig this thing.
Oh, right. Absolutely.
Everybody has that story. So if that story exists on the top of the top, highest end production, why are you using your lack of gear as an excuse to not get something done on the lower productions? I don't understand.
Every DP I've ever worked with has some sort of magic rig, magic light that costs $5 that gives us like the coolest strobe effect or something like that. When I had Russell Carpenter on the show a while ago. He's amazing. Russell is amazing. For everyone who doesn't know, Russell is, he was the DP of Titanic and the new Avatars and Ant-Man and stuff. And, you know, everyone was and I was going to get into True Lies and Titanic, but the first question I asked him, like, so Critters 2, how was that? He's like, what? No one's ever asked me about Critters 2. I'm like, oh yes, we're going to get to Titanic and True Lies and Ant-Man and all the other ones, but Critters 2.
Let's start there.
How did you light that? Because I want to know how you, Russell Carpenter, Academy Award winning ASC cinematographer,
absolutely,
lit Critters 2. And it was just such a wonderful conversation. And I'll put it in the show notes because I know people are going to go, I want to listen to that now. It was a fun conversation. But it's so true. Cinematographers, I mean, I've worked with so many cinematographers over the course of my career, and they will just come up with like these homemade rigs. Like I remember, is a circle light? What is it called? Like a ring light? A ring light.
Yeah, ring light.
Before ring lights were ring lights, there was the wooden built ring light with light bulbs built in. This is like going back into the 90s for like music video style.
I still know DPs that are using like strip lights that are just like, they basically look like makeup lights, but they bring them onto sets. And dude, they bring them onto big sets. It's literally like a Home Depot strip of.
Oh, Deakins did that. Deakins did that for like Blade Runner. Yeah.
All the time. Absolutely. Look, everything goes according to plan until it doesn't, right? And like your job is to make it happen when it doesn't go according to plan. Mm-hmm. So, stop freaking out just because you don't have the tools you feel like you need for things to go according to plan. Start moving and being ready and preparing and practicing to just let things get out of hand and figure it out. That's the job.
And
totally agree, man.
So we could keep talking about gear for about another 45 minutes, or 4 or 5 hours. But I wanted to get into Indy Mogul, man, because when I heard you went over to Indy Mogul, I was like, well, this I didn't see this coming. And
I don't think a lot of people saw it coming, honestly. But hopefully people are happy. Who knows?
Yeah. So I had Griffin on the show, and I asked him, like, wow, how did Ted get involved? Like, I didn't understand. He's like, no, it was great. It was great. We wanted to bring him in, and it just all worked out, and blah blah blah. I'm like, you know how Griffin is, and like the sweetest, like Canadian sweet,
he's the best.
Canadian sweet. He's Canadian sweet. You can quote me on that. He's like super Canadian sweet. He's so nice.
Yes.
But so how did you get involved with Indy Mogul, and explain to people who have not, God forbid, have not heard of Indy Mogul, because it is one of the original YouTube channels teaching filmmaking on the platform. So tell me how you got involved and how the hell started.
Online community of filmmakers. And back when Indy Mogul had its first little comeback, they were talking about it, and I reached out and just said, hey, big fan of the channel. I watched the channel. I honestly watched the channel way back when. I've watched and seen all the hosts. So I reached out just to say, hey, as a fan, if you ever need anything, just let us know. I'll send over some lights. You don't have to do anything with it. I don't care. As always, you don't have to do anything with it. I'll send it to you. And we started talking, and as we talked, what's called Justin, the original founder, actually reached out and said, do you have, we're thinking about bringing in another host. Do you have anybody that you think would be a good recommendation? Because you know all the online people. So I made this long list of like all the people that I thought were great.
Right.
And again, if you're listening to this podcast, I'm sure you probably have seen a video from probably most of those people on that list. I made a long list of like,
Sure.
let me tell you all the people that I think are great, and here's the reasons why. And sent it, and it was kind of radio silence, right? I didn't really get a response, and I was like, man, that was like kind of rude. I like put in all this time, and like, I was trying to support some people. And eventually, like a couple months passed, and like a good idea kind of stalks you.
Mm-hmm.
It stalks you, right? Like you can't shake it. You're eating Tortos at 4:30 p.m. in the afternoon by yourself, and the idea comes back, and the idea was really simple. It was just, what would happen if I just asked and said, hey, I am a huge fan of the show. I've loved it since the very beginning. I know all the hosts. This is a point in which, too, that Aperture we've been doing lighting content forever. And, a lot of people like the Aperture channel, but so many people had come up to me, too, and said, can you teach things that aren't just lighting? Mm-hmm. Can you bring in people or experts that can show us other things? And it doesn't really make sense for Aperture to teach like drone piloting or like gimbals.
Script writing.
Yeah, absolutely. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense at all. So I was thinking, it was already kind of cooking that maybe we'd just start like a separate channel, or maybe it'd be like a Ted Sim channel or just something different. And I got to be honest, a lot of the motivation for that and the motivation of the Aperture channel in the first place was the longer I was here at Aperture, the longer I was offset. And the film industry, man, it changes so fast. Every day it changes. It's so hard to keep up with it. And like, that's why it's great to have online education and things like this podcast to keep up. But I was feeling a little bit like all the tools that people were using on set were changing. So for me at Aperture, people think it's just an educational thing. But guess what? It's also educational for me because I get to invite my favorite freaking DP in the world to come out, teach us some things about lighting, and I am always in the know. And they brought me back on the set, and it's made everything that much better. Sure. With Mogul, basically, I reached out and I said, hey, like, what do you think about this idea? And I reached out and they were like, well, like, duh, this is like a part of the reason, when you ask a question like, hey, do you know of anyone?
We're just trying to be kind, ass. We want to take you to the prom.
Yes. It was great. It ended up being like this perfect fit. And we ended up talking to Eric and Justin about it. And they had been talking about how they wanted to see the show have new life. And I think for me, one of the biggest things that I was worried about was, I'm not like Eric, who's like a practical effects genius, right? Like I'm not like Zach Finrock, who's like a props master who can like make you anything, who can build you a freaking District 9 robot out of Legos and spare parts. I can't do that stuff. So for me, it was, what can I do? I really like Indy Mogul, and just like how Griffin kind of brought this DIY kind of documentary angle, what can I bring? And I started thinking about it, and I think one of the best things of being a part of Aperture, and we also have D&D microphones too. That's here too. Is that we've been in touch with some of the most amazing filmmakers ever. So like we go to the ASC Awards every year. We know all the people that shoot all the big features every single year, and I know all the teams that work under them too. And I think one of the biggest things for me was I had already talked before about, hey, maybe bringing on those teams to do like an Aperture video, but it's too branded, right? It doesn't make sense. So the one thing that I could bring to Mogul is I can bring this network of people that I know. And I'm going to tell you right now too, and I say this on the show too, but I'm not like a set expert. I'm not a lighting technician. Those people know more than me. But what I can do is I can bring someone, and if you ask me a question, hey, how do you do this thing? I can bring someone that's an expert about it, and I will happily sit there with you and learn because that's my job, and I need to be in the know about this stuff. So lately, Mogul has been a lot about bringing in. We brought out like Beaton Papa Michael, who's the head DP of ASC DP by Ford vs Ferrari. We're bringing on Lawrence Shear, which is Joker. So it's become this amazing thing where it's half me geeking out and fanboying because I'm sitting next to my favorite filmmakers of all time. Right? It's amazing. It's half me learning and being able to keep in the know. And like when I ask questions on that show, like I'm genuinely asking, like, how did you do this? Geeking out. Honestly, I think all of the questions I ask on that show are like real questions. Now I sit there and I get to ask my favorite filmmakers, how did you do the thing that you did? And
I feel you. That's exactly what I do, and how I've learned so much doing my show is when I ask a question, I really want to know. Like when I had Russell on, I'm like, so Titanic, James Cameron, how was that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of people look at it like it's just this like marketing thing or like a money making scheme. And like I'll say right now, like Mogul doesn't make it. We really don't make any money. All the money that we make goes to the editors that make the show. And honestly, the editors that make the show are amazing. And I'll say their names right now. Tway and Austin are just amazing. And the reason that the show is able to exist and that I'm still able to do Aperture is because those guys do the heavy lifting of making the episodes happen. Mm-hmm. I come, I spend some time, I learn, I get to talk, I get to meet filmmakers, and then I'm out, honestly. And those guys put together the show and all the episodes that people watch and enjoy. And what that does is it gives me the time and the ability to still be a part of the Aputure Deity team, still work together, and still be able to keep the company together. So
that's amazing, dude. And you've been able to accomplish in such a short amount of time, dude. It's pretty amazing. I mean, you're definitely hustling out there, man. Like I said, hustle recognizes hustle, man. So
right back at you.
And on a side note, I think I told you off air, but I want to say it on air. The only light that I used when shooting on the corner of Ego and the Liar was an Aperture light, and the few times we used light, because we were all natural lighting mostly, was totally. One little LED light, and I bounced it off walls and stuff like that, and it was great. It was wonderful. It was wonderful.
Dude, you gotta let me know about like if there's anything in terms of feedback or features or anything like that you need, because that's literally that's how we make everything now. Is it's just people tell us a list of stuff, it goes into a little list, and then that's what the engineers work on. They just work on that list of things.
That's awesome.
Like people. That's the thing, is that most people that make stuff, they're not actually on set, and I'm not. Like the engineers aren't on set, you know. So let's just ask the people that are on set to tell us what the heck they want, and then we'll make that thing.
Stop it. That just makes way too much sense, sir.
That makes way too much sense, right?
That would break the easy rule. So you don't want to do that. You don't want to break the easy rule. Now, dude, what is the biggest challenge you think facing filmmakers today?
That's a crazy question. Ooh. I think I have a slanted view of this stuff, to be honest. Mm-hmm. Do you mean in terms of
just as a challenge, like as a challenge on as filmmakers, as the industry in general? Because look, there's always challenges with gear. There's always challenges with finding money. There's always challenges of making money with a film. Like, where do you think you feel that the biggest challenge is? Because before, in the 80s and 90s, it was technology. Technology was arguably one of the bigger challenges because you could just make a movie and it was sold. It's done. If you accomplished a 35 millimeter movie, no matter good or bad, it got sold. Today, technology is not really an issue anymore, especially with good companies like Aperture and Blackmagic and some other ones that are really affordable, high quality
to make things.
And high quality, super high quality.
To make a movie.
Absolutely, you could. But in the whole industry, I'd just love to hear your perspective on where you think the larger challenge is for filmmakers moving forward.
Let me say what's not the problem first, and I think I'm looping around on. It's nice because it loops in the circles. If you ask anyone on the high end what's the problem with filmmaking, they're going to say the low end. They're going to say that dude down there is taking my gig and shooting it for way less, and he's taking no money or working for free or whatever the heck. He's ruining my industry, right? And I'm sure there's someone listening that feels that way.
Of course.
If you look on the low end and you ask them, what's the problem facing the industry? It's, those high-end people won't give me a chance, even though I'm just as good as them and just as technical as them and can make something that's just as good. I've heard both of these. And I'm going to be honest, neither is the problem here. The times have just changed, man. I'm sorry. Yes, don't get me wrong. I'm sure that there's someone out there, if you're on the high end, that a low-end person has cut and taken your gig because some company found out, hey, I can pay a third the price and get the commercial somewhere else. I get this. But you also got to realize that we live in a time where the demand for content is higher than it's ever been. And because of that, there's more jobs and gigs and need for video and content, whether it's online digital commercials. And I know everyone hates making an Instagram ad in the vertical form. I know that everybody hates that, right? But those are real content jobs. Those are real video gigs that didn't exist before. And guess what? Most of the people that take those jobs are lower end filmmakers, right? So the problem isn't each other. And I don't think the problem is that there's less jobs in the industry. There's more jobs than ever. I think if you're an independent filmmaker and you want to do narrative, the problem is marketing, and the problem is making a film that actually provides value to somebody. Marketing isn't the same way that it used to be. If you're talking about industries that have changed, oh my God, filmmaking and marketing together have changed like crazy.
Yeah.
And if you're a filmmaker that doesn't know how to market your movie,
or yourself for that matter,
you're dead in the water. And I think a great example of that is, I think this year Peanut Butter Falcon came out.
Yeah, I love that movie.
We talked to the DP and the team. Amazing, so good, and they shot it for like next to nothing, man. So good. It didn't get into Sundance. Mm-hmm. It went to South by Southwest instead. I know a lot of people are like, yeah, of course it went to South by Southwest. Dude, there's so many films that go to South by Southwest and don't go anywhere.
Most.
I think most. And I'll be honest, most films go and don't go anywhere, right? And I'm sure people are like, no, but if you don't, no, that's not the case. The problem is that the traditional ways that have worked for marketing, which are, festivals. There's people that will make it with festivals, but they're not as potent as they used to be. It used to be like you get into Sundance and that was your way, and it was actually.
It was a ticket. It was a golden ticket. It was a golden. Yeah. It was a golden ticket. You got into Sundance. You got your movie sold. You had a career. Period.
And it was possible to get into Sundance because it wasn't this like super corporate high end Hollywood thing that it is now. I'm not saying that it's super super corporate, but I'm saying that A-list movie stars are now in Sundance movies, that's strange, right? Mm-hmm. That's strange in some degree. So you can't look at all these you can't look to a PR firm because you probably don't have the money if you're doing an indie film. You got to look at yourself in terms of social media and how can I promote this movie. And that's why I bring up the Peanut Butter Falcon example because, dude, I saw a ridiculous number of advertisements for the Peanut Butter Falcon. I saw a ridiculous number of advertisements for Parasite. Mm-hmm. That I got targeted on Facebook and on Instagram. And I know friends that got targeted those as well. I think A24 is doing an amazing job with their social media marketing. And I think there's someone out there thinking, oh, then I have to hire a social media marketing firm. No, dude, you know how to do this. And I guarantee that you can learn this and you can probably do this better than a lot of the older marketing people out there that don't even have a Facebook or don't even have an Instagram. Or if they do, they don't know how to use it. I think social media is kind of the computer of our generation, right? It's the thing that gives you an edge over people that have way more experience than you. You're able to use it to promote your movie.
I mean, if you look at every industry throughout time, especially in the Industrial Revolution, when electricity was coming around and the light bulb was coming around, people were like, no, that's too dangerous. Kerosene is the future. Because there was an entire kerosene industry ran by Rockefeller, who owned the oil. And he was like, no, I don't want you to mess with my kerosene business. Or when trains came in versus horse and buggy, or when the car came in versus horse and buggy, there's always the old guard does not want to let go of the power and the money that they have. And the new guard is the new technology, the new thing is always going to win. Always. Yeah. Always. Time. I mean, from the record industry, when the MP3 showed up, they fought and fought, lost. When Blockbuster saw Netflix, they fought and lost. And, and it just goes industry and industry and industry. And a lot of what we're talking about, the massive changes that have happened in our industry, we're talking the last 15 to 20 years. Yeah. Since 2000, it's been like every year, it's like exponentially changed. I mean, when I released my first short in 2005, YouTube had just launched. Yeah. So, and there was streaming was like, you couldn't get I remember YouTube's quality was horrible and all of this stuff. And, there are a
lot of filmmakers that blew up from those early streams. Those
Casey Neistat. Casey Neistat. He was the first one. But I have to say, because I was telling you, I was going to tell you the story of how I should have controlled.
This is I want to hear this.
Okay, so in 2005, when YouTube was a year old, maybe it was before pre-Google, and I created a DVD for my short film Broken that had 100 visual effects shots in it. And we shot it on a DVX 100A. Panasonic was It was pimp.
Classic.
With a wide angle adapter. So we had a nice, the screw on wide angle adapter, dude. Oh yeah, it was nice.
Oh man.
Two cameras.
The indie days. I'm just like, please give me something that looks like a movie.
It was 24p. Are you kidding me? It was like the first 24p camera, not that Canon XL crap, like real 24p. So we had 2 cameras set up. Then we had, we edited on Final Cut 4, 5, something like that. And we did our visual effects in Shake. And we had like 100 visual effect shots in it. And I put together a 3.5-hour guerrilla film school on how we did it. Because in the marketplace, there was nothing about how to make an indie film. Nothing. Yeah. There was just no... Yeah. I mean, you had Robert Rodriguez's 10-minute film schools, which is great, Robert, and you're making $7-8 million movies, not helping me.
Not helping.
So I wanted to create product that could, help filmmakers, independent filmmakers. Even in 2005, I started, and then I'll tell you why I left in a second. So I created this, and I actually put up tutorials on YouTube, which are still on YouTube. You can go back and check them. And if I would have kept going, and if I would have opened up a channel, and I would have kept creating more of these tutorials on how to do it, I would have owned everything. I would have been the everything. But then this is where this nasty thing called the ego shows up. And the ego said, no, you are a filmmaker. You are not an educator. You're not a teacher. You're a filmmaker. Why would you teach? Why would you want to teach? And then I went off and stopped doing it. And then it took me 10 years to come back to 2015. And I opened up Indie Film Hustle. During those 10 years, I would have. Can you imagine, dude? Can you imagine if I would have started making short? I would have owned. It would be a completely different conversation. But they are still up there. I got like 5 or 6 of those videos that are still up there, and they're little tutorials on how we did stuff. And there was just nothing else up there. So that's how that's the one of the many close calls.
Dude, I think. Dude, at the end of the day, it always comes down to whatever the heck you're working on, take it really seriously. Isn't that going to become? I can say the same thing about my time at Aperture. I didn't expect to be here this long, dude. And you just don't know. You never know. And you got to take everything seriously that you do. And believe me, I feel the same way about but the one thing though is that it's never too late. That's another excuse that people say all the time. I missed my golden window. I know people that, that's a lot of the reason why people don't start channels or they don't start an Instagram.
It's going to take too long. It's going to take too long. And the same thing happened with me with Indie Film Hustle. I started in 2015. There was other podcasts going on at the time. I mean, I'm not the first indie film podcast. Yeah, but I'm the most.
It's never too late, dude.
I'm the most prolific. I got almost 400 episodes of just this one podcast because I just kept pounding it. And all of a sudden, by just this daily and weekly pounding it and grinding, all of a sudden you look back and go, "Oh my God, I'm almost at 400."
Dude, and you get it,
And then but you have to start. You have to start. Like I woke up one day at 41, almost 41, at 40, and I said to myself, I have not made my feature film yet, and I can't do this anymore. I'm not 25. I got to go out and make it. And 30 days later, I was shooting my first feature. Yeah. That simple. Not because of I need this, I need that. No, we just got to go out and do it. And if it's good or bad, irrelevant. You learn, you move on, you keep going. I would rather make 10 bad movies than wait 10 years to make one good one.
Dude, you know what?
Because I'll learn more.
Because if it takes you 10 years to make every movie too, you are not in business.
You're a Kubrick.
Sorry,
you're Kubrick. Kubrick's the only one that can make that work.
And even Kubrick has he practiced it, and he was able to do this. Yes, I it's the same thing. My brother works at Amazon, and people are, I'm sure, listening. They're like, "What the heck does Amazon have to do with filmmaking?" One of the number one rules at any tech company, and the reason I had to study this too, is because I run a tech company. Is you have to throw out your first draft as quickly as possible. You have to get it done as quickly as possible. Yes. And that is the hardest, most painful thing in the world to do, is to throw out this half-baked idea, especially with art, because it's some reflection of your soul. And I'm sure that if you're listening, you probably told a lot of people, I'm a filmmaker, which is why that when you show someone a movie that's bad and they watch it and they're like, oh, this is bad, but this person has been telling me his entire life that this is the thing he's born to do. I get that, right? That is horribly painful.
It is
That
fairly
the most
painful.
painful thing in the world, right?
Yeah.
It's hard to say I'm born to be an actor and then put on a bad performance. But at the same time, you're never going to do anything unless you just start throwing stuff out there, man. And look, Amazon does this. Tech companies do this.
Oh God, all the time.
You throw out a horrible, bad idea in the beginning, and then you reiterate. And the faster you can start reiterating, the faster you can start practicing, the better the result. I mean, I would say Mogul's doing the same thing too. When we first started, we were like, we have no idea what this is going to look like. Let's just start making stuff. And then you start to realize,
figure it out.
What can I do long term? What actually makes sense? What is fun? What is enjoyable? Where's that balance? Everything's a balance.
I actually talk about it in my book about the 10,000. We all heard about the 10,000 hours that Malcolm Gladwell said.
Of course.
But the argument was that there's a new thing. It's not 10,000 hours to learn one skill. It's the 10,000 experiments. So you have to keep doing it and doing it and doing it because you learn more from trying and failing than you do from just training to do the one thing again and again and again. And example is Zuckerberg says that at any one time there's 10,000 versions of Facebook going on every day. That the algorithm is constantly shifting, it's changing, they're trying new things. That's why, and Amazon's the same way. There's I mean, to get what Amazon has done and honed in, it's taken decades of just tightening and tweaking, and every inch of that screen has been thought about 10,000 times. And we're, to the point where now you don't even think about it. I forget that I could buy something locally because it's so easy to buy it on Amazon. And I study tech companies a lot because of, they're the new Rockefellers, Carnegies. They are the giants, the titans of this time, which is the information age. And then I'm trying to bring as much of that information and knowledge to the film industry because,
it's so true.
Yeah. And because most filmmakers don't even think about business. And unfortunately, this is a business.
It is. And who is spending the most money on business and what is the most efficient work process? Tech companies. So how are they doing it? Because there's some method to the madness. And the method is iterate as quickly as you can. Mm-hmm. Just start throwing things out there. And I think it's harder in art than tech because tech, you can be like, hey, I read this quick prototype here. Take a look at this. Kind of sucks, but it'll be something someday, right?
Yeah.
It's a lot easier to do that than show someone your bad writing and your bad movie. But I don't know any way around this.
But you know what? Look, I love The Room. I think The Room is one of the greater films of all time. Maybe not for the reasons that Tommy Wiseau thinks it's one of the greatest films of all time, but I personally think The Room, there's always something for somebody.
How are you approaching this? Are you talking about you love it in a way of he threw something out there as quickly as possible and did it?
No.
Or do you mean just literally?
If you want to have this conversation about The Room, I can have this conversation about The Room because I love The Room. And I am not ashamed of it. I think I'm one of many millions of people who love The Room. The reason I love The Room so much is one, Tommy Wiseau is our modern day Ed Wood, where there is so much passion and delusion in his filmmaking process that all he sees is his art form. It's not obviously an art form that anybody else saw because he was literally having sex with someone's belly in the middle of a sex scene. There's, and multiple other millions of things that went on in The Room that, when we were shooting,
that just don't make any sense.
When we were shooting on the corner of Ego and Desire at Sundance, all of my crew and all of the actors had never seen The Room. So one night we're we're breaking. I'm like, okay, guys, we're watching The Room. So we go online and we rent it. And we start watching it. And you can't watch The Room by yourself. You have to watch it with somebody else. Because if not, it's just weird. I can't watch The Room by myself. I need another filmmaker. I need somebody else to did you just see what I saw?
To banter and to chat and be like,
and I would sit there and we were watching it and you just see people going, why is it the same stock footage from San Francisco? What's going on? What is it? He's talking to a dog? What is why is there pictures of spoons? What is happening? It's so bad that it has transcended good. There are movies that are just bad to be bad's sake. I saw the documentary about the worst film ever made, Troll 2, which is an amazing documentary. And then I went to watch Troll 2. Troll 2 is horrible. It's so bad. It's just, I felt a little bit of my soul die, when I saw that film. But The Room, there's so much passion and love behind the filmmaker that did it. And I know people who worked on the crew, by the way.
Yeah.
As crazy as he is, as delusional as Tommy was when he was making it, and as stupid as the way the filmmaking process was shooting it on video, on HD, and on film, and all the craziness that happened, the passion of his vision spills off the screen in a way that you can't, like, it's not manufactured. It's authentic. And that's what people are reacting to in the room, is the authenticity of his insanity is what people, because we've all seen bad movies. We've all seen movies that are just so bad. You're like, I can't, why is this is just bad cinema? Like, why did someone waste time with this? But when you see The Room, there's just something magical about it that you just go, this can't be like, because he's serious. Because if he was not serious about it and he was inside the joke, it wouldn't work. But he really felt like he was making
earnest.
Really felt like he was making a masterpiece. And when everyone laughed at in the premiere, he was like, "Oh, I meant to make a comedy." No, you didn't, but that's okay. And look where it got him. Like, he's blown up and he's international. He's still making millions of dollars a year off of this little movie that is horrible, but I loved it. And by the way, you're going to see a cameo from someone from The Room in On the Corner of Ego and Desire. I'll leave it at that.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Send me this link. This is the most ridiculous thing. Well, I will watch The Room again at some point, and I'll be sure to remember that.
No, you have to watch it with friends. You got to watch it with friends. If there's alcohol in play, it's even better.
It's even better.
You know, if you can watch it at Sundance, even better. These are the things, but it just transcends. Like, you watch Ed Wood and you watch like Plan 9 from Outer Space, you just go, there's so much love behind it. Like, there's just so much insanity.
I'll keep that in mind.
Did you ever see Ed Wood, the movie, Tim Burton's movie, Ed Wood?
I don't think I have, actually.
Dude, okay. Your homework assignments, Ted. You need to obviously watch my film.
I'm watching Ed Wood.
You're obviously watching myself. You're obviously watching my movie. But after you watch my movie, you've got to watch Ed Wood. Tim Burton's Ed Wood. Any filmmaker will cry in that movie, because you could just see the love,
the ambition, and the love,
and the insanity. The insanity of him, and he has to wear his Angora sweaters, and the carnival crew of people that he brought around him. Like one of my favorite scenes in the movie, and you'll appreciate this. It's all shot in black and white, but he comes up, the costume designer comes up and like, what dress do you want her to wear? Do you want her to wear the red one or the blue one? And then Johnny Depp, who's playing Ed Wood, gets the DP to come over, and the DP's, some really old DP. And he goes, which one will work better in the movie? He's like, I don't know, I'm colorblind.
Oh no.
And then Johnny's like, well, the red one it is. All right, let's move on. Like, he doesn't stop nothing. Like one of the actors bumps into a wall, the whole damn set shakes, and he's like, cut, perfect, print, let's move on. And everyone's like, Ed, I mean, should we do another take? Why? That was perfect. He was so crazy and delusional. It's like there's certain human beings, there's certain artists that could do things like that, and they're once in a generation. I feel that Tommy Wiseau is one of those guys. He can't do it again. Like, he can't recreate that. He can't make another movie. He's tried to make other.
It has to be ridiculously earnest.
It can't, but
the earnesty that makes it work.
But he can't do that anymore because he understands what's going on. So it's just never going to happen again. That movie is such a unique snapshot in time that will live with us arguably forever. It is fascinating to watch.
I can see that in that view of art. I can see how that is a eternal, once in a lifetime movie.
I couldn't remake that if I tried. Like, if I wanted to go out and make a movie badly enough, because I would know the joke.
Not possible.
I would know the joke.
And you would too self-aware. It's not funny. It's Rebecca Black's Friday, right? Like, it has to be earnest. It has to be earnest for it to be as funny as it is.
Exactly. That's what makes it work. We've gone completely off topic, but this is fine. I think everyone's enjoyed it. All right. I mean, we could keep talking for hours, brother. But let me ask you a few questions I ask all of my guests. Sure. What advice would you give a filmmaker wanting to break into the business today?
Think outside the box is everything that someone everything that's worked for someone that is 20, 30 years older than you, I don't think is going to work for you because the times change so quickly. And
yes.
right?
Yeah.
Right?
I appreciate
isn't that
dude,
true?
it's not 1991. You are not Robert Rodriguez. It's not going to happen that way anymore, guys. It's over.
It's not going to work the same way.
It'll work a different way, like YouTube.
That's what I mean by the research and things that you're doing right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I guarantee people are researching. They research the way that old people made it. It's not going to be the way that you're going to make it. I'm sorry. It's just not. The industry is changing too much. Try something new. Do it earnestly. Put all of your effort into it.
Yeah.
And just see what happens. And you might be surprised.
It could fall flat on its face, or you can have the room. Okay.
Yeah.
Are those the only two options we have? Is that?
This is it.
I mean, it could be really bad, or it could be the room. Yeah. I don't know. That's really. Now what
it's horribly hard, man. I mean, everyone listening to this knows this, but it's just like, it's tough out there, man.
Look, everyone, if anyone who listens to my podcast understands how, I mean, I've given a lot of tough love conversations and tough love episodes where I'm like, follow your dream, but don't be an idiot, and all my work is about trying to break down the realities of the film business while still being supportive, while still being motivative, while still trying to educate them. I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm saying it's going to be harder than you've ever imagined, but I'm going to show you, at least from my perspective, tools that can help you on that path, Yeah.
One of the things that I like to think is like, if you were doing this in any other industry, would this be a waste of time? Yes or no? Like if you spent 5 years working on a screenplay, let's just pretend like LA has this weird thing.
Coffee shops.
Film City has this thing.
Yeah.
It's got this. It's got
coffee shops. Final draft in coffee shops. Yeah, I get it.
Yes, absolutely. It's got this way of making wasting your time seem like a normal thing to do.
Oh, I know.
And you can't fall into that vagueness. You can't fall into that lazy river because you'll sit in the lazy river forever. And one of the things that helps is if you're not from that city, go home and just look around and be like, if I lived in, I'm from Baltimore, so I'll say Baltimore. If I lived in Baltimore and I spent 5 years working on something, how would people view me? They'd view you as a bum. I'm sorry. They would view you as a bum. But for some reason, when you're in LA and you tell somebody you're working on your screenplay for 5 years, they're like, oh, well, it must be really good. Just don't let yourself fall into that. Look at it like you're looking at it like any other job. Seriously, dude.
It must be really good.
It's the worst thing ever. But let's just assume say you did want to work and you wanted to be like a lawyer or something, and you just said like, oh, I'm just like studying this
for the bar
legal contract for 5 years. It's right. What? So you're a bum. You gotta be that cutthroat about it. You can't just say, oh, because I'm in the film industry, this is okay. It's not okay. And I don't mean this to say this as a bummer, because I'm sure someone's like, man, that really bummed me out. No, I'm not trying to say that. I'm just, it's easier to say things that are nice and like everything's fine. It is harder to say things like you need to get your stuff together, because that means that we actually care. And that's the only reason why I'm saying this, is because I do actually care for this poor soul out there that's lost in the LA river of screenplays and coffee shops. It's a horrible situation to be in.
Like I always say, anytime I jump into an Uber, I always go, so how's the screenplay going? And they go, how'd you know?
Oh no, that's so mean. No.
It's either how's the screenplay going?
Props to you for being.
How's the screenplay going? Or
yes.
How was the casting call? It's one of those two, and it's sad, but it's true. And I'm not trying to look. Yeah. We all have to hustle. We all got to do our things. I'm making a joke, but if anything, I've done more than enough to help the community. So I can occasional joke is okay.
Yeah. And look, if you're doing it for like 6 months or something like that, and then different. You can get your thing started. That's different. That's different.
No. Look, like the Duplass brothers, right?
Of course.
Mark and Jay, right? So the Duplass brothers, when they first got back from Sundance with the Puffy Chair, they were the toast of the town. So they went on the water bottle tour. The water bottle tour around to all the agencies and all the studios.
You sit in the lounge and you get given a water bottle.
Yeah. And you meet with everybody.
And they politely say no, and you go to the next place.
And you meet everybody like, we want to work with you. You want to work with you. What's your project? Let's put it up. Let's get it in development. And a year goes by and they go, we haven't made anything. So they decided to call up their agents and say, we're not taking any more meetings. And they're like, but that's the way this town runs. You've got to take meetings. He's like, nope, we're going to go make stuff. Sorry.
Yeah.
And it worked out okay for
Make
them.
stuff and they'll call. Make stuff and they will call. It's the, when I was doing commercials, it was the same thing. It was never because you had a great meeting. It was always because they watched something they liked and they were like, can you make, and let's be real, it's always, can you make this again, but for us? And like,
cheaper?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, why not? If you're lucky, they're like, maybe we'll make it a little bit nice. If you're lucky, yeah.
If you're lucky.
It always comes from what you do. What you do creates more action, for sure. Totally
and when you were doing commercials, didn't you love when they said, you go out and you bid a job for puppies. There's going to be a horse in the shot. And they're like, but there's no horses on your reel. Dude, it's a horse. I don't need to pull a performance from the horse. Are you kidding? Mine was dialogue. I had done all non-dialogue stuff. I had no one speaking because commercials, you don't have to speak, And everyone was like, but how do you, we don't know if you can direct actor. Like, can you get, I'm like, guys, this is not Godfather, man. It's like, hey, iPhone. Like, it's not like it's 3 lines, guys. Are you kidding me?
It's people that are scared of looking down in front of their bosses, right? Some creative exec somewhere is like, is holding on for dear life, being like, if I just keep working this job for 40 years, I'll be a head of creative at one of these places, but I just can't get fired in the meanwhile. So they want to recommend the safest option every single time.
Just in case you as a director screw up, I'm like, well, everything on paper looked okay. It's not my fault.
And I picked the exact guy that has lots of horse stuff on his reel, and he did the horse thing for our horse commercial. No one could blame me for this decision. Truly, there was no one better.
No one better. I mean, he is the horse guy. Like, it's like, oh, Jesus. All right. What is the lesson that took you the longest to learn, whether in the film business or in life?
I'm still learning this lesson, but fail fast. Everyone's heard this. Everybody has heard this. You don't really understand what it means. You don't understand what it means. You think fail fast means like write a first draft and then like look at it again tomorrow. No, right. I mean like write something that's awful and show it to a lot of people. And you gotta get used to that. And I don't care what industry you're in. I don't care if you're a writer, if you're a filmmaker, if you're a cinematographer. Go shoot something horrible and stand next to it and be like, this is the thing that I made. It's so hard, but just do it earlier than later. Get used to that feeling, feel comfortable in that feeling. It's something that like I wake up every day, and again, these days I'm doing more company running stuff. So I make probably 5 decisions that I regret every day. And you have to go back on them and say, but we tried. Because you can't just do the safe thing all the time, otherwise you're not going to go anywhere.
Right. Very, very good advice, sir. Now, what was the biggest fear you had to overcome to make your very first film?
Oh, man. I don't know if I'm a great person to ask this question to.
Because you're fearless, sir? Are you fearless?
No, I don't think that. You say, one more the question was the greatest fear?
Yeah, the greatest fear you had to overcome to make your first fear, to make your first project, to shoot your first thing.
It's just looking dumb.
Yeah.
Everyone's afraid of that, right? It's scary to say this is the thing I'm born to do and then make something bad. It's like, well, what were you born for then? That's literally what that's because
you've attached your personality to your job or to your career.
This is what I'm born to do. Look at this thing. It's mediocre. Was I born for a mediocre reason? No. People feel that way and they take it that way. So just be careful.
And 3 of your favorite films of all time.
Oh, I hate this question. I hate this question. I actually asked this question for new team members as a joke. And we just like, because I feel like no matter what answer you give, everyone they either give you the or they just rail into you. I've decided that my new answer to this question is Ratatouille, and all movies are based on the Ratatouille scale. Does the movie have a rat in it? It's a 6 out of 10.
Got it.
If the movie has a cooking in it, it's a 7 out of 10.
Okay.
If the rat cooks, it's a 9 out of 10, and if it's a Ratatouille, it's a 10 out of 10. There's a lot of zeros on this list, but we can talk about lists of movies over a beer sometime.
Okay, fair enough.
A lot of movies I like, and a lot of movies I don't like.
So, where can people find you and what you're doing online? Yeah,
absolutely. Anyone that cares about technology and gear, and again, I say this and fully standing by all the stuff that I say about gear research to be procrastination. for some people, it's also just their true and deep love. They really love gear. And honestly, there is a part of me that really does love the technology behind it. It's fun. So Aperture is probably the easiest place for that. And then Indy Mogul, of course, is where we're just having fun, hanging out, learning about filmmaking. And I am learning along just with everybody else, bringing on people. I think a lot of the guests that we bring on are recommendations from people that watch. So Indy Mogul as well, too. We're over on YouTube and we have a podcast as well, too.
Very cool, brother. Thank you so much for coming on, man. I know we could talk for at least another 4 or 5 hours, but you're a busy man, and I got things to do as well. But I do appreciate it. I would love to have you back sometime. And it was great, man. So thanks for being on the show, brother.
Yeah, it was fun. Thanks, Alex. Appreciate it.
I want to thank Ted for coming on the show and dropping those major knowledge bombs on the Indie Film Hustle Tribe today. Thank you so much, Ted, for the good work you're doing over at Aperture and at Indy Mogul. If you want links to anything we spoke about in this episode, head over to the show notes at indiefilmhustle.com/392. Thank you guys for listening. I want you guys to stay safe out there. It is crazy in the world. There's a lot of things hitting us from all sorts of places. And, really quickly, I do want to address what is going on in the streets of the U.S. right now. What happened to George Floyd is irreprehensible, and there has to be a change in how we treat each other in not only this country, but around the world. Change has to happen, and change needs to happen. And if it means taking to the streets and protesting peacefully, then so be it. If I may finish the episode with another quote by Dr. Martin Luther King: "Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that." Stay safe out there, guys. Do whatever you can to help all the problems we have in the world today, whether it's what's going on in the streets, whether it's the coronavirus, whether it's the economy. Guys, it is a crazy time. I just hope and wish that we could just put 2020 back in the oven to see if it's truly done, because my God, what a hell of a year so far. And we ain't seen nothing yet, I have a feeling. So stay safe out there, guys. And as always, keep that hustle going. Keep that dream alive. And I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to the Indie Film Hustle podcast at indiefilmhustle.com. That's INDIEFILMHUSTLE.com.